Hello, sisters. Welcome to the Sacred Medicine Podcast, weaving powerful, soulful practices into functional medicine. Step into this beautiful space of devotion and explore everything from nurturing foods, rituals, sexuality, and awakening your innate sensuality. It is time to own your radiance. This is the Sacred Medicine Podcast. Hello and welcome back to another week of the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Margaret Romero, and this week we are talking about food. I've got Shawn Mynar in today with us. She's a holistic nutritionist based out of Boulder, Colorado, and we are talking about the ketogenic diet. She is also the host of Keto for Women show, which is a podcast you can easily find on iTunes, so check that out. What we talk about is what exactly is the ketogenic diet, what it consists of, what results can you see from it, and what does the basic meal plan look like? What are some of the downsides of it? Can you gain weight from it? Because it is incorporating more fat than you're probably typically used to consuming. And by fat, I mean healthy fats, not the bad fats, not the brownies kind of fat. We also talk about what type of exercise would be best when you are doing the keto diet, as well as should you continue doing your protein shakes, which is something that I on occasion will do. So I've been dabbling in the ketogenic diet for a little bit here and there, and really wanted to get the inside scoop on, just the ins and outs of it to see if that's something that would appeal to you, if it's something that you've been you're looking for a new sort of diet or a way of life. It's really more of a lifestyle. So tune in, and I hope you enjoy this. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Margaret Romero, and I am really excited by today's guest, Shawn Mynar. She is the host for Keto for Women show, and I needed to have her on because I have been starting to dabble in the ketogenic diet. And I bought a recipe book, and I've been reading about it, but I needed to get it from the source. So Shawn, thank you so much for being here today.
Yay, I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be just awesome. I can tell.
So I have so many questions, so I hope you're ready. Okay.
Fire away. I'm ready.
So just tell us, share with us, what is the ketogenic diet, the keto diet?
Yeah, so the keto diet is essentially a high fat, and by high fat, I mean really high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate diet. So you are essentially altering your macronutrients to be in this ratio with the purpose of producing ketones. And that's why it gets its name, ketogenic diet, because we really want to get to a space where our body is producing these ketones. These little things, little guys, are basically signalers. They're kind of messengers to our body to start using fat as fuel. So in order for that to happen, we need what most people use as fuel, glucose. Most of us are kind of what I call sugar burners, and we get through the day relying on glucose and stored glucose as glycogen in our muscles. And then we just eat more and we get more energy. However, when you deplete that, which is what that low carbohydrate level will do, then your body kind of responds by saying, okay, we're low on energy. Let's use a different source of energy, which obviously we all have fat that we can use on our body and the fat that we're now getting in our higher fat diet to provide our energy source. And it's just a really awesome preferred method for energy in your body. Really clean source of energy. It fuels you for a really long period of time. It fuels your brain really efficiently, your workouts. and just makes you feel really good. So that's why a lot of people now are turning to the keto diet, but it's also been used just as a therapeutic intervention for things like epilepsy, Alzheimer's, type 1 and type 2 diabetes, those kinds of measures too. But you can also just do it for general well-being, which is part of the reason why I do it, but also for healing purposes as well.
Very cool. Very cool. And so how long, what actually triggered you to become fascinated with this diet and you starting it and really getting, I mean, you have a whole podcast about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very fascinated and very just thrilled about the whole topic, which is why I talk about it all day. My journey started, my journey towards health started about 5 years ago when I was trying to turn away from medication for my autoimmune disease, ulcerative colitis, and trying to find a more natural approach that I could use to heal that instead of just being reliant on these pills. And that led me to the paleo diet. And so I removed all processed foods, all sugars, all grains, and just really got an awesome benefit from that with my health. And that worked really well for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden, it stopped working. I started getting really sick again. I started having these really random symptoms. For me, it took on looking like brain fog, inability to word recollection issues, inability to hold a conversation with more than one person, extreme fatigue to the point that I would just sleep all day sometimes, and rapid weight gain. And I just had all of these really random symptoms. I hadn't changed anything. Nothing was going wrong, except I couldn't figure this out. And long story short, ended up finding a doctor who could diagnose me as having chronic inflammatory response syndrome. It's also known as CIRS, C-I-R-S, from toxic mold exposure. And so I had been living in a moldy environment for a number of years, and it was wreaking havoc on my health, essentially. And this caused an inflammatory response in my body because of that. So I knew, because at this point I was a nutritionist and helping people heal, using food as medicine, all this stuff, also paleo. So I knew enough to know that a ketogenic diet would help with my symptoms quite a bit while going through this detox process. So I needed to heal my brain. I needed to fuel my energy, get some energy back and heal my fatigue. Hopefully I could lose some weight. This excess weight I had all of a sudden crept on in a matter of like 5 months. It was insane. So I knew that I had another resource. I knew I could use food as medicine again to kind of, at minimum, get through the symptoms, but then also I found out heal my body. So not only was I'm one of the people that in a matter of weeks, I was feeling like a completely different person, able to finally get through my life again. But I also got this extreme healing benefit from it too, just in, kind of the markers we get through our conventional lab work was amazing, the impact, but also on these very specific things that I was being tested for this chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So those all saw significant improvement just with my change in diet too. So it was kind of a no-brainer, and that was a little over a year ago. And I've just kind of stuck with it because I feel really good and I don't want to feel any different.
That's awesome. So how long did it take before they started noticing changes in your lab work?
That was probably about maybe 3-4 months.
And who initially suggested the keto diet, or were you just
I did it myself.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I did it myself. My doctor had actually recommended intermittent fasting, and I knew that the best way for me to get through fasting for 16 hours a day would be to produce these ketones as well. But then I also wanted all the other benefits of producing ketones like we just discussed. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me.
Awesome. So, all right. So what are some of the results that people will normally see once they start a ketogenic diet? And how hard is it of a diet to stick to?
Ooh, 2 really good questions. Okay, so the first thing is that it's very different for everybody. And that's one of the big misconceptions I see in the keto community, is that everyone thinks that just because someone posted about all of these amazing benefits they felt in a matter of 2 weeks that they're supposed to feel that way too. And it's different. It depends on what you're working on, what you're healing, who you are, what your past is, all that stuff. So I'm super passionate about reminding women specifically that they are on their own journey with this. So not to get frustrated and things like that. But for the most part, people almost immediately start noticing a difference in their sleep, a difference in their energy, and a difference in their brain fog. So release of brain fog a little bit. And that can be happening within the first week or two. That you notice, like, you just kind of go throughout the day, you have all this energy, you sleep really well at night, you have these really vivid dreams. So you're really getting some good REM sleep, and you just feel really refreshed and alive, and you don't have these crashes in the middle of the day, like 3 p.m. crash, which I remember I used to get all the time. You don't need to snack too, so your hunger is a lot better. And I tell people it's not like you're not going to be hungry ever, but it's more so just like, oh, hey, it's dinner time. My body needs nutrients and nourishment. I'm going to eat dinner. Not like, oh my gosh, if I don't eat right now, I'm going to punch this person in the face.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right.
Like no crashing, no hangriness. It's very steady. And you're just, because you're fueling your body so well. So that's pretty much the most immediate things. Longer term, you can experience weight loss if that's something that your body needs to do. If you're holding on to excess weight for health reasons and you kind of work on that balance. I don't promote that as being one of the major things, because I personally think if you're doing keto correctly, I'll put that in quotation, in air quotes there, then you may not experience that until your body is ready, until you've healed these other things that you have to go through. So, but yes, weight loss is a thing that can happen. Your skin will improve. I mean, it's kind of endless, honestly, but people notice a huge change, specifically women. So that's really great. And then, is it hard to stick to? I think you can make it so that it's hard to stick to if you follow too many rules. That's another kind of issue, I guess I could say, with the keto community that I have, is that there's so many rules that you have to follow all of these if you want to get into ketosis. And really, you don't have to. When you release those rules a little bit, then for me personally, it was kind of the first time ever in my life, because I'm someone that was a chronic dieter from the time I can remember knowing what a diet was. It was kind of the first time ever that I felt free around food, and I felt like this could be a lifestyle, and I didn't have to track everything, and just total intuitive eating. So it really isn't that hard to stick to if you can just find what works for you and do that, instead of following all these, like this list of 100 rules that people have in order to do a ketogenic diet.
So is it as simple as just adding more fats to your diet? Is it, and decreasing the carbs and then having some minimal protein? I mean, is it just, that's it pretty much?
Yeah. I mean, it really can be that simple. The problem is that sounds really simple, right? But then when we try to put that into practice, it's really hard for a lot of people, especially if you're coming from someone that's like a standard American diet, and even a healthy standard American diet, again, in air quotes,
right.
Then that could be really tough, because you don't know how many carbohydrates you actually have been eating all these years and how little your fat intake was, because there's a lot of people still on this low fat bandwagon, even though it's been proven time and time again to not be a thing, to not be this thing that we actually need to be concerned about. So there's a lot of that tweaking that needs to happen to a pretty intense degree if you're someone that's kind of been doing a more, standard American type carbohydrate heavy diet. So that's why in the very beginning, I said high carb and then corrected myself to mean really very high fat to being really very high fat. So it is quite a bit of fat, way, way, way more. Like for me, for instance, I was eating paleo and I was eating a high fat, low carbohydrate paleo diet at the time. And I still was shocked at how much fat I needed to eat in order to get into ketosis. So, and, again, on the same token, how low my carbohydrates needed to be. So your carbohydrate sources are mainly going to be vegetables. I'm huge on pushing the veggies in keto because we want it to be nutrient dense. And there are a lot of people out there who will just eat all the meat and eggs and cheese and cream and all that stuff and forget about all of the nutrients that we still need to get in vegetables. So that's really important. So lots of veggies, nuts and seeds, avocado, coconut, those are going to be your main sources of carbohydrate, with, of course, room to have a little bit more here and there if that's something that's appealing to you. But for the start, when you're trying to get into ketosis, yeah, those will be your carbs. And your fats are just going to be coming from like coconut, pretty much all the really awesome healthy oils that we have available: coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, macadamia nut oil, all of those. And then also things like fatty cuts of meat. So instead of going for the chicken breast, you maybe go for the skin on chicken thigh. Grass-fed meats and beef, for instance, would be a great choice. So you're getting those sources. You're just really kind of altering what you used to think of as your fat source and bumping that up quite a bit. And obviously, like nuts and seeds and all that stuff would be considered fats too.
Now, tell me, what about, give me an example of something like your typical breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Okay. Yeah. So this is fun. So for breakfast, I usually have bacon and eggs, and then I will saute some sort of green, usually kale or spinach or something like that, in the bacon fat. And then I also will add some coconut cream, because I'm pretty much dairy free. So I'll do some coconut cream in my coffee as well. So like 3 tablespoons of cream in my coffee, coconut cream. That's breakfast. And then lunch is usually a big giant salad with chicken thighs or ground beef, something like that. Usually I'll put on half an avocado on there, sometimes some sunflower seeds or sliced almonds or something like that. And then large amounts of my homemade ranch that I make all the time. So it's basically just homemade mayo mixed with some spices to make it taste like ranch, but it's avocado oil and eggs pretty much is all it is. So lots of that. And then I usually have a snack because I'm someone that likes to snack. So I do 100% dark chocolate dipped in almond butter as my snack. It's so good. It's I used to be someone that couldn't do 100%, and my taste buds have slowly changed to the point that anything less tastes really sweet to me. So that's kind of nice, a nice perk. And then dinner is usually some roasted veggies like radishes, broccoli, some combination, basically whatever I get from the farm that week. And then so all that roasted in butter with more butter on top. And then some other sort of meat for dinner, like some sort of roast or salmon, something like that. And that will usually be topped with some sort of sauce as well, or more butter or something like that. So it's pretty easy. And it sounds good, right?
It does. It does. So
it's pretty simple. It's just taking your plate of vegetables and meat and then adding scoops and scoops of fat. Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, it sounds it doesn't really it sounds very indulgent, but very good. And you're not really missing the carb. I don't know. I wouldn't. So you're not doing any potato, no rice, nothing. What about sweet potatoes? No, none of that either?
Not on a regular basis. I would say probably, again, I'm someone, like I said, I found a lifestyle here. And so there are going to be carbs involved in the rest of my life. It's just how it's going to work. And there are times where I'll go out with friends or something, we go get burgers, and sweet potato fries do sound good. So then I have them along with my burger with bacon and avocado and all that stuff. So it still is kind of ketogenic for sure. So I would say maybe once or twice a week I have carbohydrates. So I might add, last night I had squash for dinner along with my veggies and meat and butter. So okay. I'll just add that in occasionally. Yeah. Just when I feel like it. It doesn't have to be on any sort of schedule, but just kind of sounded good. Squash is one of my favorite things, and it's squash season. So I went for it. Yeah.
Awesome. I really love that. Do you also, what do you think about the bulletproof, their, form of their brain octane, which is caprylic acid oil, MCT oil in your coffee. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that works really well for a lot of people. There's a couple things that I see, and I work very closely with a large group of ladies, so I can see kind of the patterns.
Yeah.
There's a couple things I see with that.
Okay.
Some people don't do well with like MCT type oil. Like it hurts their stomach. They end up running to the bathroom, that kind of thing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is when people have that. So a lot of people will do like the MCT oil or the brain octane with butter, whip it up in their coffee and call it breakfast. And for a lot of women, now it's different for men, but for a lot of women, kind of skipping that breakfast after you've already been fasting overnight ends up doing a little bit more damage than we think or than we want. So it's I prefer if someone's going to do that, they also at least take a few bites of some food, like have a couple strips of bacon, have a few bites of chia seed pudding, something like that, just so that they're actually chewing some food and getting that process started. It kind of helps with your whole rhythm throughout the day and night to have a little bit of breakfast. Those are my only things. There's a lot of people that depend on those fatty drinks, the fatty coffees, as their entire meal for breakfast.
Okay. Yeah, there's also the fat water, which I haven't tried yet, but
I haven't tried that either.
I'm just curious to see if I didn't see the ingredients in that, so I'm not sure if it's just water with some stevia and...
It just does not sound appealing to me at all. I'd rather just drink water and then eat more fat at my meal.
Right, exactly.
Adding more butter is always good.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I love butter. And what type do you like using?
I usually switch between using ghee, which is clarified butter, so all of the dairy solids are out. But there was a huge sale at Natural Grocers here in Boulder, Colorado. So I got a bunch of butter, and I always do grass-fed cultured butter. Mm-hmm. So good.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so now, are there any downsides to being on this diet?
I would say the downsides would be not once you're in ketosis, I don't think. I would say it would more so be thinking you're doing it without actually knowing and not getting the benefits because you're not actually doing it. So I see that a lot where people, ladies in particular, assume that they are following a ketogenic diet because they've taken out the bread and pasta and sweet potatoes and that kind of stuff, but they're not actually producing ketones.
Right.
And that period of time where you are super low carb, but not producing ketones, your body freaks out because there is no source of energy coming in. They don't know, there is no ketone production to signal fat burning, but you're also not providing glucose in the form of carbohydrates. So you're not getting any energy that way. So that becomes a very stressful environment for women in particular, but all people. And so that's really the kind of downside is that if you're going to do it, you need to make sure you're really doing it and doing it correctly. Again, I use that in quotes because there's a lot of different forms of correctly, but at minimum that you're getting into ketosis. And so there's so many places out there and blogs and forums and all that stuff on the internet that say, keto didn't work for me, keto did this to my hormones, keto did that, and they weren't actually in ketosis. And so they were in that little space, which I call low carb purgatory, where they're not producing ketones, but low carb. And that causes major issues with your body. So it's just getting to that point that once you're in ketosis, you'll get past that. And that kind of takes away kind of my biggest downside. The only other thing is, if, and you'd think you'd miss carbs, when you're in ketosis. But again, like I mentioned with the chocolate, like your palate just changes. Mm-hmm. You stop having these cravings because you have this total other source of energy. So your body, when you have cravings, it's because your body's like, oh, I need glucose, I need energy, or you have this blood sugar issue. But you're healing your blood sugar pretty quickly for most people when you're in ketosis because you've taken out anything that's kind of giving you that blood sugar hit. And so those cravings kind of go away. So I would say that maybe some people would crave things that they, technically can't have, but that happens so often. And if you really, once you're in ketosis and you've done that healing, if you really want it, then just have it, just have a scoop of ice cream. It's fine. And then go back to doing what you're used to doing the next day. And just there's a lot of, at least in my version of keto and what I teach women, there's a lot of room to make it work for you so that you don't have these downsides,
There was something that I was reading, maybe it was in the recipe book that I got, which I haven't really fully looked into it completely. I just got it in the mail a little while ago. And it does talk about how to test to see if you're in ketosis, something about there's a calculation. And so is that necessary or not?
I personally really promote the use of testing for ketones using a blood ketone meter. So basically it looks exactly like a glucose meter, like testing your blood sugar. It looks just like that. You prick your finger and get a reading for ketones instead. I highly recommend that because that's how you can figure out what's working for you and what's not working for you. So you don't have to go to these websites and be like, do this, this, and this, because you have your own set of this works for me and this doesn't work for me, which is going to be different than anybody else. So using it for informational purposes and to learn more about your body. Of course, also, like I mentioned, getting yourself out of that low carb purgatory and making sure you're actually getting into ketosis is really helpful too. But that's also going to be a marker for how you determine how much fat you need, how much protein you need, how many carbs you can do. So you're just learning basically your own macronutrient ratio that works for you to get you in ketosis using that testing device. So it is really beneficial.
And where do people get that testing device? Is it sold?
Yeah, there's a couple different places. You can get them on Amazon. There's one, it's called Precision Extra, that you can get on Amazon. And then you get the test strips too. There's also a website by my friend Jimmy Moore, who just launched his testing device, which is actually just the same exact thing, but much less expensive, which is really nice. And that's at bestketonetest.com.
Okay. And this is going to be all in the show notes too. Bestketonetest.com?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. And when do you check that? Is that after like an hour after a meal, or how do you?
No, better to do it when you haven't eaten in a while. I'd say at least 2 hours, maybe even longer. So I recommend, and I personally test right before dinner. So like I'm cooking dinner, I'll test my ketones because obviously it's been a while since I've had my last food, and it's always a little bit more accurate to test later in the day. So testing right when you wake up doesn't often lend the results that you're looking for because it'll be lower just because you've been using ketones overnight. So I highly recommend spending a little more time or waiting a little longer in the day to test.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Let me see. There was something. Oh, and so how does one know? Because I think that maybe there are women that are like, wait a minute, you want me to eat like all of this fat? How am I going to not gain weight? Like, can you do it wrong and you actually gain weight from it?
You can. That's a good question. Well, I guess there's a couple reasons why you would gain weight while doing this. First of all, again, being in that low carb purgatory, because as we know, and as I'm sure you would agree, when you gain weight, it's a symptom of something else going on in your body. So it's some sort of imbalance that has reared its head, whether it be hormonal, thyroid, adrenal, the list goes on. So There's a lot of reasons why we gain weight, and it's not just because we are eating more fat. So we more so need to look at the reasons why you're causing more stress on your body that's making you gain weight. True. So like the low carb purgatory thing, because you're kind of causing that stress. Your body doesn't know what to use for energy. So getting into ketosis will help with that. For a lot of women that I work with, they've already have these adrenal thyroid hormone imbalances. And when you are working on healing them, which keto is great for because it's putting your body into the state of just relaxation, homeostasis, blood sugar regulation, all the things that often cause us to have these issues in the first place. But in order to heal those, you have to make this switch. You have to nourish your body. Your body has to know that everything's safe, and then you can start healing your hormone issues. But that doesn't come right away, which is why at the beginning I hesitated saying you could lose weight. That doesn't come right away if you're actually healing that root cause issue. So it may look like I'm eating all this fat, I'm eating all this food, I'm getting all my nutrients, but I'm not losing weight. And that's a huge thing that I answer on a daily basis. But it's because you're doing that ultimate deep level healing instead of just going on another crash diet. And I do not promote keto as a diet at all, but definitely not a crash diet or the next thing to try. This is something to heal your body once and for all from a very root cause level. And in order to do that, sometimes you might gain like 5 pounds, or you may not lose weight, but then you heal. And then, as you know, our bodies will get to their comfortable spot pretty naturally and without much drama once we get balanced out internally. So that's really what I promote. And I think as long as you're willing to be a little bit patient and not use this, like I mentioned, as the crash thing, then weight loss will happen if it needs to happen, but has nothing to do with you eating more fat. Eating more fat is only going to help the situation on so many levels, because it will allow you to produce ketones, which signals to use fat as fuel, but also because fat is so nutrient dense. Like, these high quality fats have so many nutrients that most of us are deficient in. Mm-hmm. And so just getting those imbalances settled in your body will be a huge help. So just be a little patient, trust the process, don't fear the fat. And I promise weight loss will happen if it's needed for your body, not just because you decided you want to lose 5 pounds, but if for health reasons, that's where you need to be.
Very cool. And how about exercising during all this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I recommend, pretty much you're not going to really have to change all that much about your exercise routine currently. But at that beginning, when you're kind of teaching your body how to do this and you've decreased your carbs, but you're not producing ketones yet, and, kind of that energy source is kind of scarce, definitely tone it down. So that would be probably the first 2 or 3 weeks. Tone it down, take it down to walks and yoga, things like that. It's also a great time to kind of work on just giving your body a rest if you are someone that works out quite regularly. So use that as a time of rest, and then you should be able to get right back into your workouts as soon as you produce ketones. If you are someone that does mainly like long endurance type workouts, like running, cycling, anything like that, swimming, then you are going to feel fantastic, because ketones are a phenomenal energy source for that kind of long, slow burning kind of workout. If you're someone that does more like HIIT workouts or strength training or something like that, you kind of have to tinker with it. Everyone is different, but you may feel a little better if you either do that fasted and work out after, or you may need a little bit of carbohydrate before. And I'm talking like maybe half a banana or half a sweet potato or something like that before. And then you might feel a little bit better. And then that would be kind of your carbohydrate source for the day besides the veggies and stuff. So a little bit of tinkering that needs to be done. And that's kind of high level keto. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, for people that are just starting out, take a break for those 2 or 3 weeks, be gentle on your body, and then go back to normal and see how you feel, and then kind of tinker from there.
And what do you think about like protein shakes? Like, people are like, well, it's like something that they have ritually in the morning, maybe before working out. Do you recommend that? I know it's a lot of protein and not necessarily fat. I guess you can add an avocado in there and, brain octane or whatever into it. But what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, that's the hard part, because there are so many people stuck on their protein shakes, which I understand. But as far as keto goes, they're probably not going to need or want that in their ketogenic diet, because first of all, like you mentioned, there's a lot of protein. We're often just drinking that with water or whatever and shaking it up. And that's a large amount of protein solely to go into your body with no other nutrients. And that will in itself cause a blood sugar spike. And what we're really trying to do is have this even, nice, stable blood sugar throughout the day. So that in itself is probably going to keep you out of ketosis, because you can't get into ketosis if you're having these blood sugar swings. And protein does that almost as much as carbohydrates do. That's why we moderate the protein and we make them more fattier source. So, but like you said, you could make it into this really awesome meal that contains a lot of fat by adding in some nut butter and some avocado, like you mentioned, MCT oil, and turn it into this really great fat shake that happens to have some protein in it. And then it becomes more like a meal. So that would be kind of one of your meals, not something to just do in between. And that would really dampen down that blood sugar effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Do you do that at all? I mean, do you do protein shakes or?
I don't know. I mean, I used to drink 2 protein shakes a day. I come from a fitness background. And so I was all about the protein and the low fat. And yeah, I had to completely undo all that damage. But I don't do any protein powders anymore. I like to chew my food, So
right.
I like to, if I'm having already a lower amount of protein, then I want to have that as eggs or meat or something like that instead of drinking it quickly.
Okay.
That's just me personally.
And do you also incorporate some intermittent fasting in with all this as well? Is that sort of
Yeah, I have dabbled with fasting, but it just kind of depends. Sometimes I wake up and I really want breakfast. So I don't fast that day more than like the overnight thing. And then sometimes I actually prefer, especially if I'm strength training, I prefer working out fasted. It feels better for me. So then I will go a few more hours because I work out in the morning. I'll go a few more hours without eating. So I don't really do anything beyond 16 hours. That would probably be the max. And that's a pretty common intermittent fasting schedule for a lot of people that are trying to do it. Mm-hmm. So you fast for 16 hours, that would be overnight. So for instance, say you stop eating dinner at 6 p.m., then you wouldn't eat breakfast until 10 a.m. the next day. So pretty common and really quite easy for most people. And you can get a little bit of the benefits of fasting from that, which is great. The only thing, again, there's always this kind of disclaimer I have to say. The only thing is that a lot of women push themselves and their bodies to do that when they're not ready. And if you are someone that already has like adrenal fatigue or thyroid imbalance, estrogen dominance, anything like that, where you're dealing with hormonal issues specifically, then that's going to cause more harm than good to start. So it's always best to get your bearings with keto, have 3 meals a day. You're fasting plenty overnight, so you're still getting benefits of fasting, and really get that down and then see if it comes naturally. Like if all of a sudden you forget to eat breakfast one day and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm hungry and it's noon, then okay, so you naturally fasted. But forcing your body to do that can often cause more harm than good.
Especially with adrenal and thyroid issues as well.
Exactly. And that's why, keto can get a kind of a bad rap for hormone imbalances and specifically adrenal and thyroid. But it's, again, everything we talked about where there's this low carb purgatory and people aren't actually in ketosis, or they're trying to fast too soon, or they're seeing this as the crash diet that they're going to do, and they're totally under fueling themselves and eating, 1,200 calories a day or something crazy like that. And those are the things that are causing you to have further adrenal issues and thyroid issues. Whereas if you take all those away and fuel your body appropriately, get into ketosis, then it actually is really great. It's really great for both the thyroid and the adrenals. I completely healed my adrenals from a bottom basement state while in ketosis.
Yeah, because the adrenals love fat.
The adrenals love fat, and they're so connected. Your adrenal health status is so tightly connected to your blood sugar health. Mm-hmm. So if you're having wonky blood sugar where you're up and you're down and you're up and you're down all day, your cortisol is going to try to regulate that. So you're constantly calling on your adrenal glands to make that happen. And it's a huge tax on your body and your adrenals specifically. So you take out that and you have this nice even blood sugar, which is obviously one of the biggest points about keto, and your adrenals can kind of relax and gain that system back. So it's super
Awesome.
important, I think.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh, this is so good. I've learned so much. So, how can people
Yay.
find you, and what do you offer right now? Can people come to you? And I know you have the podcast, so tell us a little more.
Yeah, so you can just find out more about me in general at my website, ShawnMynar.com, just my first and last name. And I do have a podcast. So if this conversation speaks to you, this is kind of an overarching everything I talk about on the Keto for Women show. So if you want to learn more specifically about the things we just discussed, that's what I do over there. And I do have a course that takes women slowly and safely and effectively from whatever current diet they're doing into a keto diet over the course of 6 weeks. It's a 6-week course. And I kind of have it all laid out, so it makes it pretty easy, pretty seamless. All you have to do is just kind of follow the program, and you will get into ketosis much safer than doing it on your own, I have found. So that's available too, and you can find out the information about that over on my website as well. There'll be a new class coming up in November.
Oh, cool. Nice. Okay. So, and where else are you? Are you on Instagram, Facebook?
Yes. Yeah. Social media. I'm on Instagram all day. I love doing Instagram stories. So if you're into that, you can find me at Shawn Mynar Health, and then the same thing over at Facebook, Shawn Mynar Health.
Okay. I'm going to have to, I don't think I have to look you up. I'm going to follow you. I love Instagram.
You can see all the food I'm eating. So I post my pictures of my plate quite often, which is, we went over.
Cool.
So you can see all those meals.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So I always end each interview with just 3 really quick questions.
Fun.
First one is, what are you currently reading that you're absolutely loving? Any book at all?
I just got done reading Me Before You, which I don't read fiction all that often, but I needed something. I don't know if any readers out there get it when you read all this nonfiction, and I'm very into learning more and more and more. But then sometimes I just need to not think about anything, but get involved in someone else's fictional life. And so I just read Me Before You, and it was so good. It was kind of one of those books where I just couldn't put it down. Like, I would stay up late because I couldn't stop reading.
I love that. I love that kind of book.
Mm-hmm. It was so nice. My brain needed that moment to relax.
And so, aside from the dark chocolate that you talked about, what is one of your other biggest indulgences? It doesn't have to be food, that you are just like, I spend my money on this all the time.
Ooh, good question. Probably yoga. I would say I love going to a nice, awesome yoga studio, and just spending my time there and getting really into it. So probably that, I would say, having that membership and being able to do that is really important to me.
Yeah. Which studio do you go to, by the way?
Yoga Pod.
Oh, okay. That must be a new one from when I used to live there.
It may have been since you have been here, but it's in the 29th Street Mall for anyone that is familiar.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah.
And let's see. What else can I ask you? What is the last app that you downloaded on your phone?
Ooh, good question. I just downloaded this parking app that we now have in Boulder, where you don't have to actually pay anything to park. You just do the app, and it just automatically takes it from your Apple Pay or whatever. And it makes it really nice and convenient, because if you're not near your car, but you need to add more money, you can just use the app. I don't know if anyone else has that.
Oh,
but
that's
it's
awesome.
Really nice. Yeah, it's great.
Oh, I love that. Okay, Boulder.
Not very exciting, but it's exciting for me.
Now, do you have apps that are like all kinds of keto stuff, or are you?
No, I have found that keto can be extremely overwhelming. If you just Google keto, you will be on it for days trying to figure out what the heck everything means. Mm-hmm. So it's better to take a step back, I think, for everybody. And I encourage my clients to do this too, and figure it out for you. So I figured it out for me. It works really well. So I don't really want to keep indulging in all this information that isn't right for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I take it back a notch.
Awesome. Well, Shawn, it has been such a pleasure to connect.
Yeah,
Next
this
time I'm
was
in
great.
Boulder, we need to hang out and meet. I would.
Yes, we definitely need to get coffee or lunch or something and meet in person. That would be super fun. And I know you'll be back here, so
Oh
it's going
yeah,
to happen.
for sure, for sure, and or maybe even go on a hike too would be awesome.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation.
This was fantastic. My listeners are just going to love you, and thank you so much for everything that you do. And I am just going to start following you on Instagram and your podcast and just make it a regular part of my day. So
Oh, thanks so much.
I will talk to you soon. Hopefully that'll be on a hike in Boulder at some point. And
Yes.
have a beautiful rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Thanks again. Bye bye.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for listening. And for all the show notes and to learn more about Shawn and also her podcast and her offerings, head on over to margaretromero.com/episode 49. And if you've been loving these shows, I would so love it if you would be able to go on into iTunes, leave a 5-star review. Have the most beautiful week and love to you all. Take care now.